Before we start tonight, I want you to do something small for me. Go check your nearest window. Is the curtain closed? Good. Leave it that way until I tell you it's safe to look again. Because the man in tonight's story didn't listen to that warning, and somebody outside never stopped trying to make him. I'm Alex Vane. This is Unquiet Corners, and tonight we're going to Blackwood Bay, Maine, a town so small the fog knows everybody's name. This isn't a story about something evil. It's worse than that, in a way. It's a story about something that just wanted to be heard. About a window, a number, 145, and 60 years of waiting. Lock your door if you haven't already. Let's begin. Blackwood Bay sits where Maine runs out of land and the Atlantic takes over. It's the kind of town where the ocean air tastes like salt and pine at the same time, where the forest presses right up against the back porches, and where, if you ask the wrong person the wrong question after dark, they'll just look past you and change the subject. By daylight, it's almost ordinary. But after the sun drops behind the tree line, a fog rolls in off the water, thick, white, endless, and something in your chest tightens before you can explain why. It was exactly that silence Dylan Beauchard came looking for. Dylan was 31, a sound engineer by trade, the kind of guy who'd drive 4 hours for the sound of wind through a specific kind of pine, or wait 3 nights in a blind for one good owl call. Podcasts, film studios, ambient labels, they all wanted what Dylan could capture, and Blackwood Bay, with its bottomless quiet, was exactly the kind of place that paid off.
He rented a cabin for the month, a weathered wooden place at the very edge of town, up on a low ridge where the trees opened just enough to let you feel how close the woods really were. Upstairs, the bedroom had one enormous window, floor-to-ceiling glass. Lying in bed, it didn't feel like you were looking out at the forest. It felt like the forest was looking in. The cabin's owner was a man named Mr. Harris, 90 years old, hands like old rope, eyes that had seen too many winters. When he handed over the keys, he didn't look at Dylan. He looked at the window. Close the curtain before you sleep, son. Every night. Don't forget. Dylan laughed it off, politely. Worried about bears, Mr. Harris? No. Just keep it closed. There was something in the old man's voice that didn't match the words. Something tired. Something that had been saying the same sentence to different people for a very long time. But Dylan was 31 and from the city, and old men in small towns always have a superstition or two. He shook the old man's hand, said thank you, and didn't think about it again. For 2 days, Blackwood Bay delivered exactly what he'd come for. Wind raking through the pines, a woodpecker working a hollow trunk, an owl somewhere deep in the dark calling like it owned the night. He went to sleep happy, recorder full, curtain drawn out of habit more than fear. The 3rd night, the game changed. It was exactly 1:45 in the dead of night. Outside, the fog had turned solid, the kind of white you could lean on. Dylan sat at his laptop with his good headphones on, cleaning up the day's recordings, when he noticed something wrong with the waveform on his screen. A rhythm. A pulse, clean and steady, blinking on the frequency meter. but his headphones were dead silent. He pulled the headphones off, and that's when he heard it, out in the real world, not through any speaker. Tap, 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 like someone very patient, very precise, dragging a fingernail against glass, keeping perfect, unhurried time. He went to the window. Nothing out there but fog, thick as paint. He touched the glass, and his hand went cold. Not cool, cold, like he pressed his palm flat against a block of ice. He told himself it was a branch, just a branch knocking in the wind. But that night, for the first time, he closed the curtain, and he didn't examine too closely why his hands were shaking while he did it. The next night, Dylan woke up freezing. Not forgot a blanket cold, bone cold. The kind of cold that belongs somewhere much further north than Maine. The fireplace, which had been burning fine when he went to bed, had gone out completely. Not embers, not warm ash, just cold gray dust. He sat up and saw his own breath fogging white in front of his face, inside his own bedroom. And then he looked at the window. The curtain was open, pulled wide, both sides, and Dylan was certain, absolutely certain, that he had locked it shut before he went to sleep. Out past the glass, in the gray wash of moonlight through the fog, a woman was standing. She wore a gown, once white, now soaked through and torn at the hem. Her hair hung wet and flat across her face. And her eyes had no color in them at all. No pupils, no whites that meant anything. Just two dead, pale hollows fixed on him through the glass. Her fingers, thin as broken twigs, were already moving against the window. Tap, 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 steady as a clock. Dylan grabbed his phone, hands shaking so hard he nearly dropped it, and turned the camera on the window. On the screen, nothing. Just fog, drifting and empty. But with his own two eyes looking past the phone, he could see her. Perfectly clear. That's when she leaned forward and pressed her face flat against the glass. And her jaw began to drop. Lower. Further than any human jaw should go. Until her mouth was a black, endless hole in the middle of her face, opening in a scream that made no sound at all. Then the tapping changed. It became pounding, both palms slamming against the glass, hard enough to rattle the frame in its sill. Dylan didn't remember screaming. He just remembered the floor coming up to meet him. And then nothing. He woke up the next morning to ordinary daylight pouring through that same window. Like the night before had never happened. He didn't stay to think about it. He grabbed his jacket and drove straight into town, to the only coffee shop on the main street. And that's where he met Margaret. Margaret was somewhere past 70, with the kind of voice that had told this story before, more than once, to more than one renter who'd come down that same hill looking pale and rattied. She didn't seem surprised at all by what Dylan told her. She just nodded slowly and ordered him a coffee he hadn't asked for. 1966. Halloween night. That's when it happened. She told him about Linda, Mr. Harris's young wife, who'd gone walking into those same woods on a foggy October night and lost the path home. Hours she wandered, freezing, while the fog swallowed every landmark she knew. And finally, she saw a light. The cabin. Her cabin. Her husband asleep inside, safe and warm. She could see him right through that window, sleeping. So she did the only thing she could. She scratched at the glass, tried to wake him, tried to get him to let her in. But Harris was a heavy sleeper, and glass that thick doesn't carry a sound like that. Not far enough, not to a man dead asleep on the other side of it.
They found her the next morning, right under that window, frozen solid. Her nails were all torn away, son. And there were scratches in the glass, long ones, blood in them. Folks around here say she's still standing at that window, 60 years now. She just wants somebody to open it. And if somebody does, then she comes in, and whoever's inside doesn't come back out. Not ever. That afternoon, Dylan made up his mind. He was leaving. He had the car keys in his hand, his bags already packed, 1 foot out the cabin door. And then he stopped. Because Dylan understood something most people never think about. He understood sound. What it means to almost be heard and not quite make it. A woman had frozen to death 12 feet from her own husband because a pane of glass swallowed her voice. And for 60 years, she'd been trying to finish a sentence that nobody on the other side could hear. The fear in his chest didn't disappear, but something else moved in next to it. Something closer to grief. Dylan didn't run. He drove to Mr. Harris's house instead. When he said Linda's name out loud, in front of that 90-year-old man, Harris broke down completely. 60 years of silence finally giving way. Dylan sat with him, and with his permission, recorded every word. The apology Harris had never gotten the chance to say out loud, to the one person who needed to hear it.
It was Halloween night again when Dylan drove back up to the cabin. 1:45, exactly the same hour, 60 years to the night, in the dead of night once more. But this time, Dylan didn't sit down to flee. He sat down to finish something. He set up his professional speakers, aimed them straight at that big glass window, and waited. The room went cold in an instant. The fire in the hearth guttered and turned an unnatural shade of blue before it died completely. And out past the glass, the fog churned and split, and Linda stepped through it, furious, grieving, ready to break the world apart to get inside. Tap, tap, crack. A spiderweb of fractures spread across the window. Another blow. The crack widened. Dylan's heart was somewhere up in his throat. One more strike, and there would be nothing left between them at all. With a hand that wouldn't stop shaking, Dylan reached out and pressed play.
Linda, my love, forgive me. I didn't hear you. I have spent every single day, every second, sorry for that night. I never forgot you. Not once. Come home now, Linda. Come home and rest.
Alongside his voice, Dylan played something else. The comfortable, ordinary crackle of a fire. The sound of a warm room. The sound of a home that was waiting. Linda's hand froze, flat against the glass. The horror in her face began to loosen, fold by fold, into something gentler. In those blank white eyes, something almost tender flickered back to life. 60 years of frost, 60 years of waiting and rage, melted away in a handful of seconds. She stood there a moment longer, still, quiet. Then she looked at Dylan and bowed her head, slowly, in a gratitude that needed no words at all.
Her shape began to dissolve into the morning fog, one breath at a time, until there was nothing left at the window but mist and pine trees and silence. No more tapping that night. Not one single sound. The next morning, before Dylan left that cabin for good, he walked up to the window one last time. The glass had fogged over with the night's dew, and there, written into the condensation by some hand he never saw, 2 words: I'm home. Dylan stood there a long while, looking out at the trees, at the fog drifting low across the ridge. And then, Slowly, he smiled. Because he knew, somewhere past that glass, in whatever direction a person goes when 60 years of waiting finally ends, Linda wasn't standing in the cold anymore. She'd finally made it home. That's our story for tonight. I want you to think about something before you turn this off and go to sleep. Linda wasn't dangerous because she was evil. She was dangerous because she was desperate. Desperate to be heard by the one person who should have heard her and couldn't. 60 years for the gap of about 12 feet and one pane of glass. So here's what I keep thinking about, long after the lights are off. How many people in your life right now are tapping on a window you haven't noticed is there? I'm Alex Vane. This has been Unquiet Corners. Sleep well, if you can.